more often is that people are surprised by my age, but they think, well, I should have known that because it's in black and white.
Yeah.
But they say, I just thought maybe that was to make it look retro or something. So I said, no, we actually did it from 1957 until 63, and it's never been off the air. It plays in about 50 languages. So I get people that come up to me in all sorts of, foreign and exotic languages, and they start talking to me, and then they look at me, and I'm going, I don't understand what they said. I mean, I hear a word that I think may be Beaver in their language, but I'm not really sure. So it's just a really fun, it's been a very, very fun life, and made me friends all over the world.
And so you said it's never been off?
Never been off the air since October of 1957. And it plays all over the world.
So there's not many TV shows like that don't go off TV. I mean, and I feel like a lot of those older shows from around that era are the ones that don't go on the TV. So you always see like your I Love Lucy's on TV always, your Leave It to Beavers.
They had really good production values. We have 234 episodes. So with a lot of the holidays and things, they can show almost one episode a day. And a lot of times it would run in the early mornings or in the early afternoons when the kids were either getting ready or were ready for school and they were sitting there waiting for something, or in the afternoon. So it shows all over the country, and it's just kind of something that they plug in there, and people can say, oh yeah, go watch TV, and then do your homework or whatever, and for a half hour they know that their kids aren't going to find out anything terribly bad to do. I don't know,
yeah.
Beaver got in a lot of trouble. Hopefully the kids don't get in that much trouble, but so it's a good show, and it's held up very, very well.
Oh no, definitely. Do you feel that speaking of holding up, do you still feel like there's a lot of things to be learned from it, even though it's such it's an older show, and obviously our times have changed?
Well, there is a message in it. If you do something wrong, then there will be consequences, and if you make the right choices, you're going to be rewarded. And there are people like Eddie Haskell, and they're always going to have you do the wrong thing, and you need to recognize those people, even though you think that they're your friends, they're not. And when your friends say, "Oh, go ahead, Beaver, you won't get caught," you probably will.
Yeah. you gotta realize. Yeah. So the message is still there.
That message is still there, and every show does have a message. If the Beaver does something wrong, there are consequences. If he does something right, there are always better consequences, and he's a lot happier. But I usually make the wrong choices in the beginning.
you gotta have a show, right?
That's right.
So you started off as a child actor. Was that something that you wanted to do, or was that maybe your parents' idea for you to do?
Actually, it wasn't at all either one of those. I started as an actor when I was 2 years old, and my mom was walking through. I don't even think they exist anymore, but it was like a May company or a books. It was called Desmond's, and she was looking for clothes for me. My dad retired as a superintendent of LA City Schools, but at that time he was a coach. I was the oldest, so she didn't. I have a sister and 3 brothers now, but I was the only child. But they didn't have a whole lot of money. He was a coach, and my mom was looking for clothes for me, and I was kind of wandering around a little bit, and she was, the lady said, "Is this your son?" And my mom went, "Oh, whatever he broke, I'll pay for." I'm very sorry. And she said, "No, but I've noticed you've been trying clothes on him, and he seems to fit our clothes very, very well. And we were looking for a model because we do fashion shows. So that could he come back like tomorrow, and we would pay him. I don't even know how much it was, not very much. And he could keep a few of the clothes if you'd like to do that." My mom said, "Oh, he could do that." At that time, television was just starting. And people don't realize it, but at that time they didn't have videotape. So it was all live TV, which was great in New York because they could go to the New York stage. And those people worked all the time in front of a live audience. But out here in California, most of the people that were actors, especially child actors, only worked in movies. Well, all you've got is a crew. You haven't got a whole audience in front of you.
Yeah.
So I started working live TV, like the Ed Wynn show, at 2 years old. It was very easy. They'd say, I was probably 2 and a half, and somebody would say, "Go out and walk over here, and a man's going to come over and he's going to give you a bottle and drink it." Well, Pet Milk was their sponsor in the cans.
Uh-huh.
They used to just baby formula. So I'd walk out there and some nice man would come over, give me a bottle. I was very happy.
Yeah.
You know? And that's how I started. Once you did it right, and there was an audience and a lot of crew members and a lot of things going on, you did it right. They couldn't afford to have another kid that might cry or run off, that wouldn't do it. So I worked all the time. I was doing one of those shows a few years later, 3 or 4 years later. Alfred Hitchcock came on to do a live commercial for his last movie and hired me for The Trouble with Harry, which was Shirley MacLaine's first movie. Wasn't mine, and John Forsythe's first movie too. And I went over and said, "Hi, and I said hello to him. He said, "Hi, can I talk to you for a second?" And he picked me up, put me on his lap. He said, "Are you an actor?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "What have you done?" And I told him the things I'd done, because I'd been on interviews before. But this really wasn't an interview. He was just somebody sitting there. And he got up and said, "You know, my latest movie is such and such." Did this commercial and left. And about 3 days later, my agent got a call and said, "You have a job." My mom said, "Wait a minute, we didn't go on an interview." She said, "No, you met Alfred Hitchcock." My mom said, "Well, he was there." And she said, "Well, he liked Jerry. He talked to him, and he's going to be in this movie called The Trouble with Harry." And he said, "There's a lot of unknown people in it. Shirley MacLaine, it's her first movie. John Forsythe, it's his first movie. I've done a couple movies before that, so it wasn't mine." But then I started doing a lot of movies, and in 1957, I went on an interview that had about 3,000 kids on it. And it was for Beaver to Beaver, but who knew what that was? It was actually called Wally and Beaver at that time. And they just wanted 2 boys, they said, and their friends. So they got all sorts of people. And I walked in and, read the lines a couple times, and they said, "Okay," and I walked out. A couple days later, they called me back again, and I was thinking, "I've already been there." But they said, no. And all of a sudden, I was the only person that size, and all these people were older people. They were looking for the older brother.
Oh, okay.
So I had the job, and we did the pilot, it sold, and then for the next 6 years, we did Beaver to Beaver. So there's 234 episodes, which makes it really good because they can run 1 episode a day for almost an entire year and have a new episode when it went into syndication. And it shows all over the world, and I can speak Japanese, and all these weird languages. In fact, in a lot of places, they have a girl dub my voice because I'm little. Not only do I speak Japanese, but I have a girl's voice.
Yeah, 'cause they usually voice young boys over there. And so, when you film, did you film multiple episodes at one time?
No. We were just like a movie. We would come in on Monday, and the writers were Joe Conley and Bob Mosier, and they were very, very well known. They had done Amos and Andy, and they had written for Amos and Andy even on radio, and that was the most popular radio show in the world before they did Beaver to Beaver. And so on Monday we would come in, and they would have the script would be delivered to us on the Friday night before, and my mom would read it to me a couple times because I couldn't even read. I was, like in the 1st grade, and I would listen a little bit, and I would go there, and they would have somebody else read my lines, and they'd say, "Okay," and the next day we'd come on the set and rehearse it, and by then I had the lines fairly well down. And they might say, "Oh, you missed this line or that line," and so we read it on Monday, rehearse it on Tuesday, and block everything out, and then the next 3 days we would shoot and take off the weekend, so I could do whatever I wanted, come back Monday and start it all over with a new show.
And what was the time between when you would record an episode and then it would end up on TV?
Well, we did 39 a year, and it would be probably 6 to 10 weeks. Okay. And of course, if there was, if it was say a holiday, they might say, this show, we're going to skip this one ahead because there'll be a lot more people home maybe for like a Thanksgiving or a Christmas vacation or something like that, or we want this one to show because this is one of our better shows. Not that they all weren't good, but they thought some had more appeal than some of the others.
Bring a lot more viewers.
Yeah, they say this is one of our greatest. We want this one to show during the Christmas break when a lot of people are at home.
So fast forwarding just a little bit, the new Leave It to Beaver.
We did that in the 80s. We started in 1985. We did a movie of the week. It was the number 2 movie of the week. And then we did over 100 episodes of that. It was on Ted Turner and MCA. And most people say, I heard of it maybe, but I saw maybe 1 episode, but I never saw it again. It was $1 billion project, and they lost it. It was one of the first shows that they put on discs, like, you know, DVD
Yeah.
discs, and that was a whole new thing, because the original Leave It to Beaver is all on 35mm film. This was on a disc, and there were, you know, basically 6 years of shows, almost 100 episodes, and no one could find it.
No one can find it.
Showed one time, and Ted Turner says, I sent it back to Universal. Universal says, no, we sent it to you. And of course, they got all their money because they, you know, it was a huge insurance, some poor insurance company took a big hit. And, you know, we all thought that it would be like the original. The whole plan of the show was that it was going to be the original Leave It to Beaver would play for a half hour, and then the new Leave It to Beaver would play, and they would play like that for, you know, as the old Leave It to Beaver still is, but there's no new Leave It to Beaver anymore because no one can find it.
Now, so the only episodes you'd be able to see is if someone had recorded it while it was on TV.
And there weren't even DVDs back then. At that time, it was all, you know, tapes. So you'd have to have a videotape, and a lot of those tapes, don't, since they were off the air, don't really hold up that well. So, you know, I've got a couple that people have sent me, and you can watch them, but, you know, it's just a shame, because I spent a lot of my time and a lot of effort and all the other people on the cast, and we had a great time doing it. So I don't regret it in any way, but it's just kind of sad that it just kind of somehow.
Yeah, you put in all that work, and there's nothing. I mean, you have things to show for it, but you don't have, you know, you can't show someone like.
We were building the legacy, and now the legacy has partially disappeared, because the legacy will always be the original show. And the new show is very, very good, but the base of the tree and the roots are the old show, and we still have that, so that's the good thing.
Has there ever been a talk of rebooting Leave It to Beaver?
Well, like that was the whole talk before, to redo it, you know, when we did the new one. There has been, but you know, it's hard. You know, a lot of the people have passed.
Yeah.
So Tony and I, you know, are no longer when we did the new show, we had kids, so we could do that again. But a lot of the people, a lot of the people that have passed, like the father, you know, and a lot of people have just disappeared. That you know, they're not actors; they were child actors, like Tony's boyfriends, girlfriends, well, our fellow friends on the show. So there's been talk about it, but you know, you can't really remake a masterpiece.
Yes.
You can repaint the magic. Yeah, you can repaint Mona Lisa, but you're not going to do it as good as Da Vinci.
No, that's totally right. Anybody have any questions out here that they wanted to ask? I know it's always nervous to be the first person to ask a question.
Well, you're nominated.
I'm nominated. I mean, I got plenty of questions. Oh, move the water? Want to get a good picture? Yeah.
I have here that I'm doing a live with the Leave It to Beaver fan club on Facebook. And one of the viewers is asking, how are they able to get to prompt you to cry in crying scenes? Was that hard? Did that come naturally?
Well, actually, that's kind of an interesting question, because the one that really taught me that was Hugh Beaumont, who was the father of Leave It to Beaver. He was interesting because he really wasn't an actor. I mean, he was a great actor on Leave It to Beaver, but what he really was a Methodist minister. And he only became an actor because where he was preaching was down in the worst part of LA to all the people that had alcohol problems. And he had a ministry down there, and because they had alcohol problems, they really couldn't support a pastor. And he had been an actor because it was a job that he could do, go out and not have to work, you know, every day 9 to 5 or whatever it was, and still have his ministry. Now, when he did Leave It to Beaver, he would do that only on the weekends, and he could really help a lot more people. But he told me that when you want to cry, you just kind of people think you're crying, and I'm the happiest guy in the world. I can cry in a second.
Do anybody else have any questions? Because I'll continue going. There you go.
Hi there.
I was wondering if you maybe talk about some of the other projects that you worked on after Leave It to Beaver.
Well, after Leave It to Beaver, I had been working as an actor since I was 2. So I had never been to a real school. I had a private tutor, and it's the best education in the world. It's like the education of the kings and queens of Europe. So you're one-on-one, and I wanted to go and play sports. So I spent the next 4 years, it was just fortuitous that I finished in the 8th grade in real life on Leave to Beaver. 9th grade was high school, so I spent the next 4 years in a regular high school. I was on the football team, I was on the track team. It was 1967 when I graduated, and I could either go to college or I could join the military or be drafted, so I wanted to be in the Air Force, so I spent the next 6 years in the Air Force and then the Air National Guard. And people had always kind of had a stigma about actors, and they weren't supposed to be the brightest people in the world. I hate to say that, but that was kind of, especially child actors, because a lot of them got in a lot of trouble. So I wanted to kind of go against the grain on that. So I went to Berkeley. I'm a graduate of Berkeley. I have a degree in philosophy. And I honestly, and I'm not trying to boast, but when I turned 21, because of the Jackie Coogan laws, I had an awful lot of money. And a lot of people that were actors that got it didn't know exactly how to take care of it. So I did a little thinking, and I thought, you know what? Who takes care of money? Bankers. So I became a banker, and I was an operations officer and a loan officer for the 3rd largest bank in the United States. And I did that for a few years. And when I was a loan officer, I started doing real estate loans. And I was making huge loans to these people. And gee whiz, their real estate agent was getting like 10% of that. And I thought, this is what I make a month. This is what he makes in one deal. I should go into real estate. And I did that. And then that freed up my time a lot more. And then I started the new Leave It to Beaver. And we did that for 100 episodes, and they lost it. But by that time, I had basically accumulated enough that I really didn't need to work again all the time. So I started doing personal appearances, and I've been working since full-time since I was 2 years old. So I kind of took some time off, and I married my lovely wife that's down there in the first row, and we have, children. I have a son, and he's a director of, he works in the industry. I have a daughter that works in the industry. One of my daughters is a teacher. So we have a wonderful family, and life is very, very good. And I love coming out here and meeting people, and there's nothing better than having somebody come up and say, I'd love to have your autograph. Well, I'd love to give you one. It's nice to just meet people, and they tell you nice things and say how much they like the show. And, gee, it's like petting a dog. My tail just starts wagging like crazy.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
So, and first of all, thank you for your service.
Thank you.
I appreciate that. Obviously, we see with child actors now, with social media, it's just this whole big thing. People are always watching them. Was it kind of like that back then, where you feel like you always were in the spotlight?
Well, you always are, and people are always, you have a lot of maybe hot buttons. You have a lot of money, you have a lot of fame, you have a lot of people that tell you can do anything you want, and a lot of times that's really hard to understand what you really can't do to not get in trouble. My dad, as I say, was a superintendent at all these schools, but he was also principal and vice principal, and he kept me on a very short stick. I knew exactly what I could do. The only thing where we really didn't even really cross swords, but I always wanted to go to Berkeley, and he wanted me to go to USC because he was a big USC guy, and those USC guys like to keep it in the family. But I went to Berkeley, so we not parted ways, but he was not the happiest that I went to Berkeley. But I went there and came back, and as I say, I was a banker, and then I worked in real estate. I was lucky enough to do the new Leave It to Beaver. And, I still work as an actor every once in a while, but I'm so well known as the Beaver that a lot of things that I get, I turn down, because it's like, well, yeah, try to be 6 years old again. That's tough. That's a tough acting
one acting job you can't do.
Well, I can do it, but it's just, couldn't you do a little more like 6? No, I can't. That's it.
So, did you ever hit a point, because a lot of actors get known for one role. Did you ever hit a point where you were just like, I'm tired of people wanting to talk about Leave It to Beaver?
No, I'm always happy to talk about it, because that would be like saying, if you had a really good experience, say in junior high and high school, and you meet people that basically grew up with you, like we're in your same class or maybe even in your same school, and they say, remember the day we did this, we went to the big game or that? Those are all things that I really did. They got to watch them on TV, and they'll say, do you know what happened on this show? Were you really up in that Super Bowl? Yes, that really was up there, but there's just all sorts of questions that they have. Hopefully, every once in a while, I'll have the right answer for them. But yeah, it's just really nice to even know that people are still watching it and still enjoying it all over the world. One of the kind of, I wouldn't be sad, but it's just kind of disappointing for them, is it shows in so many languages, and they forget, I don't speak Japanese, I don't speak German, I don't speak French, and they go, oh, Beaver, yes, that's me. But that's all I know that they've recognized me, but they're just such nice people. And, I try to get their name and spell it right and give them an autograph. But, it's been a wonderful life, and I'm just very happy to associate with it.
Were you, so obviously there was a lot of child actors back then, so were you guys kind of like in a group where you all knew each other?
Yes and no. It wasn't like we all went to school together, because we had our own teachers, where I would see them, and it was for a very, very short amount of time, with if there was a big premiere, parades, the Hollywood Blade Parade, or all the different parades, sometimes all over the country. So you'd see them there, but most of them were at different studios. So it wasn't like I would see them every day, and I knew who they were. They watched my show, and I watched their show, so I knew their characters, knew about them and who they were. But it wasn't like they were kid next door, because I didn't see them that often.
Mm-hmm. So people get excited to meet you.
Do
you get excited to meet anybody? Is there anybody that you've ever met that you just were absolutely head over heels?
Well, the person I think that a lot of people that I've worked with, Shirley MacLaine, Bob Hope, a lot of different people that I've worked with over the years, not only on Leave It to Beaver, but other things like that. Probably the one that was one of my favorites that I didn't even realize it at the time was Alfred Hitchcock. That was an Alfred Hitchcock movie. Alfred Hitchcock, I used to sit on his lap, and he would read me the other lines, and he would give me directions on how he wanted the scene played. And then when I was doing Leave It to Beaver, he was doing Alfred Hitchcock Presents. So he would come in about every 3 months and do, I don't know how many episodes, just the intros and outros. Yeah. And so I'd always see him in the commissary or walking around the studio. He was the very first person that ever called me Mr. He'd always go, hello, Mr. Miles. I would say, hello, Mr. Hitchcock, how are you? And I'd bounce around and he'd say, I'm doing fine. How is your mother and everything? But he was just a very, very nice man. I didn't realize that most actors were petrified of him because he had kind of a reputation. So, and but he was my buddy, and he would come in about once every probably 2 to 3 months to do the intros and outtakes to Leave to Beaver, and I'd see him, and I'd go running up to him and go, he's running up television, and I'd go, yeah, hi, Mr. Hitchcock, and he'd say, hi, Jerry. So he was a really nice fellow, and I truly missed him. I don't miss him because I didn't know him that well, but he was a very, very nice.
It's a great experience. It's something that not a lot of people would say.
Not a lot of people can say it. Not a lot of people would say, he was so afraid. I didn't have enough sense to be afraid.
Anybody else have any questions before I keep rambling on here?
I do.
Yeah.
No, you go.
So Ken Osmond, who played Eddie Haskell?
Yes, sir.
How was he off screen?
Well, it would depend on how you were. I'll tell you why. He went on, and he always wanted to be an LA police officer. So he is a motor, and he could have been promoted up to whatever and been back at a desk someplace, not Ken Osmond. So not only is he a motor cop, he is down in a part of LA that I would walk around in the daytime. He's on a motorcycle, so he's the first guy to everything. If you're drinking down there, he pulls you over. But can you imagine? You're there, you know you've had probably one too many drinks, and who walks up to your car but Eddie Haskell and says, let me see your license and ID, whatever. So, but he is just the nicest person as long as you're not drinking and driving. And then he's not.
You said you had a question over here, right?
I forgot it.
You were on the spot.
Oh, yes. There are several dozen people watching on the Leave It to Beaver fan club on Facebook. Join if you haven't. And there's a big debate that Mayfield was in Ohio. There's no question, and here are the bullet points to prove it. People have come to great lengths to prove that Mayfield is in Ohio. What do you have to say to them?
The producers, and not me, I will just tell you what they would tell you. They went to even greater lengths to never mention where Mayfield was, because they wanted it to be everywhere USA. They never had, like one time I think Beaver was running away, and they were kind of upset because it said Austin was so far away on the bus stop, I was going to go to the bus and run away for whatever reason. And this one was more money. They said, well, no, we're going to change that a little bit because we don't want people to be able to figure out that he's closer to Austin than, say, Sacramento or Chicago. But they wanted it to be everywhere USA. Now, it can't be everywhere USA because a lot of people say, well, it never snows. Oh, well, then it's got to be California. But it's not. It's everywhere USA. It's always either fall or summer, or spring, I guess, because it's never too hot, never too cold. Mayfield's always just right. It's the perfect city in the United States.
We all want to live in that city.
I wish I could. I did for a little while, but not really. Like, only make believe like you can live in it.
So that was all like on set? No, that was like...
Well, it was on the back lot of Universal, but if you've ever been on the Universal tour, it's a huge studio. It's like, I forget, 60 or 70 acres. So they have a frontier town, they have 3 lakes on the property, they have what they call Colonial Street, and that's where the house is. And so if you look real closely, if we go, here is, like if Beaver House was here, and we're coming this way, if we go up the block, if you look closely, there's the Munster House, the houses that a lot of Alfred Hitchcock, in fact, most of Alfred Hitchcock's movies were done there. So you'll see the Psycho House. So it's a very interesting neighborhood to live in.
Yeah.
I hate to keep asking
No, totally, go ahead.
So you have to keep going out there to that exterior facade of the house just to say, hi mom, I'm home, and then the rest is filmed in an indoor studio, is that so?
It is, it's a hard thing to explain. If we're on the sidewalk or the grass or walking down the street, those would all be outside, the exterior, and that's on the back lot of Universal. But because you have planes and car noises, when you're doing any lines, that was always inside. And so they had an actual facade of the outside of the house right before. So you could walk into on the set, you could walk into that door. They had what they call the greens person, and that's his job, is to put plants around so if they shoot out, all they can see is green in the background. And when we walk in the door, that would all be indoors. Now, if I walk, like in the beginning of the show, when we walk down the street, that's the outside. But when you walk in, it's just a big void. There are no rooms. It's just 4 walls. In fact, if we have to go out, I think there was one show, and I couldn't tell you which one, where I had to wave goodbye to somebody. I had to stand on the ladder because there's not even a platform under the windows up there. So they built like a little facade. I climbed up a ladder, waved out the window. But I'm looking down. There's nothing down there but dirt.
Did they ever, just kind of speaking of sets and things like that, did they ever save any props and things?
No.
There's nothing that's still...
I still have my green hat. And people wouldn't know it, they just that baseball cap. And the reason was, and it was a nightmare for the wardrobe man, the very first day I walked in, it was kind of sprinkling out. And my mom didn't want my hair to be wet when I arrived there. And so I walked onto the set, and the director goes, I like that look, keep that hat on him. The guy goes, well, that's not wardrobe, that's something he wore. And she goes, I don't care. They could never match it. Because it was a hat I had, I don't know where.
You don't know where it came from?
My dad was he's a retired superintendent, but he was a coach at the time. I was at one of his games, and somehow I either bought it, somebody gave it to me, and it was green, and it was a very, not odd color, but it was just an off-colored green that they couldn't even match. They could get blue ones, they could get red ones. There weren't any green ones that matched it. And it drove the wardrobe man crazy because I was a kid. I'd finish, the scene, he'd be standing there. Don't let him get past me without grabbing that hat, because if he messes that up, we're done.
That's why I had to take the hat from you,
so I wouldn't get, spill it or just say, oh, the hat, where is it? I don't know. It's just not on my head. I don't know where it is.
So you still have that hat?
I still have that hat because he guarded it so carefully. I have a safe at my house, and that's one of the things that is in my safe. And it's still, I have a very big head, so it still really fits me.
Has anybody ever wanted to put it on display of using it?
Oh yeah, I've taken it to different places and worn it because it still fits me. But it's, after all these years, that was 1957.
Yeah.
It was actually an old hat when I got it. It wasn't old, but yeah. So it has seen better days, but it is the same green hat.
That's awesome. I'd love to see it on display. Yeah.
I came prepared. I did my homework.
No. Yeah.
2 questions about being a kid.
Okay.
Number 1, now you are happy to reminisce with us, but in the moment when you are at the height of Leave It to Beaver viewership, and people are stopping you everywhere, did that bother you? Did you not understand it? Were you annoyed? And also, being a kid on the set, between scenes that you just have to wait for your scenes, did they let you be a kid, run around, play?
Well, you couldn't run around and play, really, because you're in makeup. So you have makeup and you have wardrobe on. So if you ran around and got sweaty, or ran around and ripped something, or that they could not allow, because we were allowed to do things like that. But we were very closely monitored, and we were Tony and I were the only kids there. Now, when they had a schoolroom scene, we'd have a few other people that we could go out and maybe throw a football with, and things like that. So that was a fun day for me. But for the most part, I had a private teacher, and they're some of the best teachers in the LA Unified School District because they can pick the very best second or first, or whatever grade I was in, teacher, and they can then pinpoint what you're good at and what you're bad at. I was always very, very good in English and a lot of things. Mathematics, on the other hand, I was more challenged with. So I spent a lot of time not only coming up to my grade in mathematics, but also going beyond. So then I went to school, people said, oh, how do you know this? That's not for, 3 more. Well, I knew that from school. What was the first part of your question?
Were you annoyed at being recognized and stopped?
No, that was always fun. I mean, people, it's like if somebody came up to you and said, I really like you, you don't know why, but they said it, well, that's a good thing. And I've never really had a lot of people come up and say, that's the worst show ever. So a lot of people say, well, it's so unreal. And I say, well, why is that? Well, that never happened to me. None of that happened to you? Well, some of it did. That's not enough.
We don't have to have something that happened to you to like it. I mean,
well, I know, but a lot of them they say, kids weren't really like that in the 50s. Most of the shows were taken a lot from things that really did happen to kids. I mean, and it's not a joke show. If you watch a lot of the shows today, it's set up, joke, and people are just trying to make you laugh by saying something funny. Leave It to Beaver always has a point. If you do something wrong, you're punished. If you do something right, you'll benefit.
You can learn from the show. Yeah, you don't have to. And so, kind of piggybacking off that question you were just asking, nowadays a lot of it's, take a picture, can we take a picture, can I get an autograph? Was there a lot of asking for pictures and autographs?
Oh, absolutely. And even before Leave It to Beaver, as I say, I've been an actor since I was 2, so, I worked with Hitchcock, Bob Hope, and all those movies. We'd go to premieres. Now, it's, of course, a lot more now for Leave It to Beaver, because you'd only do that for, the 5, maybe 6 weeks that the movie first opened. You'd go, the premiere, and then the this, and the Emmys. But, they were always big fun parties, and people, it was nice to have people say, I know your name. They may not know my name. They may think that my real name is the Beaver, but it's not. But, they'd always say, oh, hi, Beaver, or before that, whatever my character name was in that show, and ask for your autograph. And, I learned to sign my name probably before a lot of kids, because I was signing autographs when I was like 4 and 5, not 4, probably 5 and 6 years old. And then when I started signing your friend Jerry Mathers as the Beaver in 1957, that became one of my trademarks. If I just say, have a happy day, Jerry Mathers, he goes, no, I want your real autograph. Well, I'm Jerry Mathers. No, I want your friend Jerry Mathers, Beaver.
Did you have another question?
They are asking if you have any memories of your early first teacher, Miss Canfield, the actress that played Miss Canfield.
I do. They were all very, very nice. What you have to kind of realize that a lot of people don't is I didn't get to spend, and Miss Landers was very nice too, but I didn't spend a lot of time with them because they were adult actors, and as soon as I finished my scene with them, I would go immediately back to studio school right on the set there. But it wasn't like as an actor today, when you're finished with your scene, you go back and all the actors kind of sit around and drink coffee and talk. I was in school, basically, if I wasn't on the set from 8 to 4, I was doing schoolwork. So the older actors, not even Tony Dow, but the adult actors all got together, sat around and, drank coffee and had a good time. I was in school. So they were friends of mine, but it'd be like the kind of relationship that you really had with a teacher. You didn't really see her except at school. Maybe if you, stayed after school. Hopefully if you were after school because you were helping her and not had to stay after school. But they were all very, very nice and good friends of mine in that they were adults and I was a child. So they weren't my best friend, but they were all of them people I knew if I needed any help I could count on.
Now, we talk a lot about acting, things like that. Right now, what do you enjoy doing? So, like, you're going to go home this week. What kind of things are you going to do? Like, do you have any hobbies or things that you're passionate about?
I have a lot of things I'm very passionate about. I have a beautiful wife, and a happy wife, happy life.
Yeah.
And my wife is president of where we live, a Rose Society. And you would be surprised how much work a Rose Society person has to do. There's always aphids that are always attacking us. It's like a game show. We go out and kill the aphids and they come back. And she's always prepping for a new show. And will this Rose make it? And she wins a lot of stuff and I'm very, very proud of her. But we have a wonderful life. I have grown children and now grandchildren. And they're the best kind. They're much better than children because you can hand them back at the end of the day.
You're the one that gets to spoil them and then say,
that's
now
right.
Your problem the rest
right.
of the life.
So we just have a great life together, and it's always fun. We come and do things like this and meet a lot of nice people, and it's always nice to be remembered and have people, ask you a question that maybe they're for their whole life and said, why did you always do this, or why didn't you do that? Sometimes I have an answer. Sometimes I just go, you know what? I don't know. Why do you think it was? Well, that could be right, because I don't know if that's right or not.
Yeah.
Fans are asking, when you were at the height of the Beaver and it was your time to relax and watch TV, what shows were you watching?
You know what? And I have a problem with that question, and I'll tell you why. I didn't have a lot of time to watch TV because I had to be on the set every day at 8 in the morning. Now, we rehearsed for 2 days. So the older actors would come in at noon and we would rehearse from 1 until 5 o'clock. I had to go to school. So I had a private tutor there, and Tony had a private tutor because he was in high school. So we would come on, we would do our schooling, and then I would go home. I would go out and play for a little while with kids from the neighborhood, and I was kind of maybe like the parochial school kids or the public school kids. I was the outside kid. I knew them all, and I could play with them, but they all went to this school or that school, and I went to this school that no one ever heard of. So it was a great education, and I'm a graduate of Berkeley, but it was something that I really liked doing. So going to the studio was fun for me, and I basically had probably 100 people that if I wasn't happy, they wouldn't be working. So we had all sorts of things. I would build model boats, model planes, do all sorts of things to keep me interested enough that I wanted to go back every day. And it didn't seem like a job. It seemed like, and I had a private teacher, and then my dad would be able to pick him, being in the school system, he could pick some of the best teachers he picked, and it paid a lot more than a regular teacher got because they work not just from the school, they work until, as long as I was on the set, they also work as a welfare worker, they had to be there, so it's a very, very good job, and a lot of teachers wanted me to pick the very best one, so I had the very best in the whole LA Unified School District school teacher, and it was just a really good education.
So you were not sitting around watching TV much?
On the weekends, I can't say that I wasn't watching a lot of TV, but no, I was basically at the studio from 8 to 5 or 9 to 6, 5 days a week, and when we weren't doing the actual show or going to school, they always had things for us to do, call New York, call Boston, call Chicago, do radio interviews, do this, do that. There were always things that we could be doing, and you know what? It wasn't like that I considered work. When you say, was that work? No, that was fun. Somebody comes up, and it's like playing a game. Can you answer this question? I can answer that question.
So back then, did they have laws to where you go?
Yes, they're called the Jackie Coogan laws, and that was from the 1940s. So
okay.
You have to have, and she has to be a certified LA or Los Angeles School District teacher. But the nice part is they can pick because they work a few more hours and they get paid a lot more than a regular teacher. They're called studio teachers. So like Tony would have the very best, one of the very best high school teachers. He was always interested in art. All of his teachers have a doctorate in art. He's now a very famous artist, but he learned it because as soon as he could do all his ABCs and math, he finished early enough, and even after, could go back, and this woman would teach him a lot of techniques for painting and doing all sorts of different things that I can't even explain to you, but he could.
We have just a little bit of time left, so I want to make sure any other questions.
The sports fans of the show are asking, did you really meet Don Drysdale when he came to the show?
Don Drysdale was really on the set of the show, and he did actually autograph a baseball for me, which I still have in my safe at home. Very, very nice man, but not only did I meet Don Drysdale, but I got to meet a lot of people because even though we were doing Leave It to Beaver, we were on the Universal lot, Universal Studios. Now people pay when they come to Los Angeles now a lot of money to take the Universal tour. Well, I could walk into Wagon Train or Spartacus the movie with Kirk Douglas or all the different places. I'd worked with Alfred Hitchcock. He would come in about once every, probably, it's hard to remember, but maybe 6 or 8 weeks to do the intros and the outros to Alfred Hitchcock Presents, or I'd see him in the commissary at lunch, and he'd always go, hello, Mr. First, always call me Mr. And we would talk a little bit, and then I'd run back because I didn't want to bother him. But, so I knew all those people. I didn't realize, honestly, how famous most of them were. They were just people that, I was not a peer of theirs, but, I was probably that little kid bothering them all the time, but they didn't care. It was kind of fun.
Any other ones?
They're good.
About 1 minute left. No? So I want to thank you so much, Mr. Mather, for coming out here. I appreciate it, and it's such an honor because when I see my dad sitting and watching your show, Leave It to Beaver, I see the kid in him again, and it's very, very heartwarming that you're able to still bring out the joy in all these people. So thank you so much.
Well, I find that too. Thank you very much. But I find that too that people say it's multi-generational. I watched it with my grandparents when they were raising me, maybe, or they'd come over and babysit. And now I'm watching with my kids, and I hope that they can do it. And I hope they can too, because it has a lot of good lessons that people can learn from it.
It really does. It really does. And just like you said, it's never went off TV, and I don't see it ever going off TV.
All over the world.
All over the world. Thank you so much, Mr. Mathers, for coming out here.
Thank you
so much. Thank you, everybody, for being there.